Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Living in the West, a series of programs where we look into the lives of Muslims living in the West as a minority. We're going to be looking at how they should be interacting, the social interaction, the economic dimensions involved, the political activity, all in all, what their future is in living in the West. I have with me today Sheikh Haytham Al-Haddad from the Muslim Research and Development Organisation in London. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Sheikh, previously we spoke about the importance of this topic, and we looked into the fiqh. You gave some examples, of course, of what issues are coming on the foreheads of our brothers and sisters, those things which they're worrying about. Could you just possibly, in a nutshell, give me an explanation or a very concise explanation of what actual fiqh is itself?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Fiqh, in brief, is life. Mm-hmm. How to live is fiqh. From a technical point of view, fiqh is the group of rulings, okay, that govern the Muslim's life. أحكام المسلم في حياته. So that's why from a fiqhi point of view, from a technical point of view, they said that there are 5 main ahkam: obligation, prohibition, recommendation, dislikeness, and permissibility. So the different rulings that we are, as human beings, are involved in, okay, are considered to be the fiqh, al-ahkam al-shar'iyya. So as you can see, it is life. And comprises everything in our life. It includes everything in our life. How to eat is part of fiqh. Okay? How to get married is part of fiqh. How to interact with your neighbor. How to be involved in a political dimension. And here, Brother Jamil, it comes to my head, although I was not thinking of this issue, that many Muslims in the West, they don't deal with the issues facing Muslims in the West from a fiqh perspective. They think that fiqh is a static way. It is not a dynamic way of dealing with the contemporary issues.
A very secularist kind of, not secular, but it's very secular in its way. They leave fiqh for many issues, but they don't believe it can help in these areas.
Maybe. They are not seculars.
Not seculars, but it's a secular methodology of looking at things.
Yeah, you can say this.
They're separated.
You can say this. And we had so many discussions. And they said, with those people, I had so many discussions with those people, and they are saying very interesting thing. They said, with all due respect, fiqh is a very static way of dealing with these problems. That's why we need to talk about visions, and we need to talk about strategies from a political angle, or those who are qualified to speak about visions and strategies are not the scholars, the classical scholars. No, they are the thinkers. And that is not true. Because if we are talking about the political dimension, what does political dimension means? Means, should we be involved in the political life? Involvement means what? Means it's part of our actions.
There's rules and regulations involved.
Rules and regulations, part of our actions. All our actions are governed by what Allah Jalla wa Ala and His Messenger said, which means that it is part of fiqh. So we should put that in mind. Many people exclude fiqh from political dimension, social dimension, and in particular, they exclude fiqh or the technicalities of fiqh when they talk about Muslims living in the West.
And like you said, the fiqh is derived from where, Sheikh? It's from the Quran and Sunnah, or is there any other sources available, especially nowadays?
Of course, we don't want to expand on this issue, but fiqh, okay, is the result of the ijtihad applied on Quran and Sunnah. Means the main sources of fiqh is Quran, Sunnah, and the consensus of scholars. Now, from a fiqh point of view, from a technical point of view, there is what can be known as static fiqh and a dynamic fiqh. Both are considered to be fiqh, both of them. Sharia is not a static way. Sharia is not a pure dynamic way. Sharia, in altogether, is a dynamic way, but it has some fixed rules that cannot be changed with we are living in the West, whether we are living in a Muslim country, etc. And in the meantime, there are certain angles or there are certain parts of Sharia that are dynamic. And those dynamic parts, Allah Jalla wa Ala meant them to be like this in order to cover all aspects of our life. That's why Allah Jalla wa Ala says in the Quran, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمْ الْكَافِرُونَ الظَّالِمُونَ الْفَاسِقُونَ. Those who govern by any other law other than the law of Allah Jalla wa Ala, they are the kafirs, they are the zalim, they are the fasiq. Allah Jalla wa Ala made this as a general statement. The other ayah, إِنِ الْحُكْمُ إِلَّا لِلَّهِ. Hukum belongs to Allah Jalla wa Ala. Belongs to Allah whether we are living in Britain, whether we are living in America, whether we are living in South Africa, whether we are living during the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab or elsewhere. Which means that when Allah Jalla wa Ala revealed the Quran, the Sunnah, and also gave authority or some authority to the scholars of the Ummah, Allah Jalla wa Ala knew that this religion is compatible to every single place in this globe and is also compatible or can be compatible to every single period of time.
Okay, so this is a very, very concise, mashallah, and very clear actually. But then we spoke about, in a previous episode, about the two views. We've got a group of people who believe that we should take all our rulings from certain well-known and prominent scholars from the East. Another group of people who say, well, hold on, we've got to remove these people. They don't know what's going on in the West. We've got to stick to our scholars. From the scholars, I'm sure there's many who are going to fall into this category who look at fiqh as a very, very static form. What do we have to say? I mean, what are these people calling to? These scholars from the West, shall we say?
Actually, as we said, okay, both are extreme views. Okay, because at the end of the day, we are one ummah. And our scholars are the scholars of the ummah. And that's why now we have majami' fiqhiyya, okay, the fiqh councils. For example, the fiqh councils that belong to the Muslim World League, the Muslim Council that belong to the Muslim Organization, and the fiqh council even in Egypt, the fiqh council in India, etc. Now, most of those councils, or all of those councils, have members from all over the world. And they have scholars that represent different countries, different situations, in order for them to come together to discuss these issues. And now we are moving from ijtihad fardi, from individual ijtihad to collective ijtihad, to talk about those contemporary issues. So we cannot separate or have this dichotomy between Muslims in the East, okay, or scholars in the East or in Muslim countries, and Muslims in West or in the localities of the Western countries. Therefore, it is true, as you said previously, that lay people, lay Muslims, what are they going to do? They are going to refer to Muslims or to scholars living in the West. Now, for those Muslims, they cannot identify whether this is the best scholar or that is the best scholar. So they have to go back to the scholars that they can reach. This is the criteria. Some Muslims in the West, maybe it is much easier for them to ring some scholars maybe in Egypt, or Muslims or scholars in Pakistan. If they are from Pakistan, they might have some relatives in Pakistan or so, okay, or scholars in Saudi Arabia. Now, this is for the lay people, okay? This is the criteria for the lay people, that they should reach these scholars whom they trust wherever they are, okay? Now, we may recommend them to reach to some local scholars, okay, if they can reach them and if they can trust them. But as I said, in many, from a practical point of view, you cannot tell them this, okay? And sometimes they say, well, as we said, it is much easier for me to ring someone from abroad. But the main issue is طلاب العلم, okay?
Students of knowledge.
Students of knowledge. Those students of knowledge, if they want to understand the fiqh, and if they want to contextualize the fiqh, some of them, they isolate themselves from Muslims in the Muslim countries, and on the other hand, there are طلاب ilm, or there are some du'at or seekers of knowledge, that they limit themselves to scholars in the West. And as we said, neither this nor that is true, is the Islamic stance.
So these two poles that we have, you just spoke about, those who just take from, say, the West, and those who just take from the East. The solution is to have people who we take from and we don't take from. Or what is the solution?
No. So طلاب العلم, those who seek knowledge in the West, they should have the ability to distinguish what can be taken from scholars in the West and what can be taken from scholars in the East or in the Muslim countries. And now we have to be careful, because, see, the amount of fiqh that they need to refer to some contemporary scholar is not that big. Is not that big. Sometimes we exaggerate. We think that all our situations are unique situations and different situations. That's why we have to refer to local scholars. No. In many circumstances, even without referring to scholars in the Muslim countries or in the East, what we are facing in the West have been discussed in the books of fiqh, in the classical books of fiqh.
This is one of the problems.
So we should not really exaggerate on this
This
matter.
is one of the problems that some of the scholars from the West that we see, is that they totally object to anything from previous scholars, and they come with something totally new, something totally unheard of. This phenomenon has just started recently. Is it something which has been through history, or is it, like I said, something recent?
No, this is a unique situation for these days, okay? In these days. And it has not been before, because Allah Jalla wa Ala gave authority to scholars. Allah Jalla wa Ala says, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of knowledge, the people of dhikr, if you don't know. Allah Jalla wa Ala, in the ayah of Surah An-Nisa, Allah Jalla wa Ala gave authority for وَمَن يَتَّبِعْ غَيْرَ سَبِيلِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, the one who follows a sabil or a path other than the path taken by the believers. And who are the main representatives of the believers? The scholars. The Prophet ﷺ said the scholars are the inheritors of the prophets.
Yes.
So they have a position from an Islamic point of view. We cannot ignore them. We cannot say that we have to come up with a new ijtihad, totally a new ijtihad, because we are facing new situations. So that stance is not really an Islamic stance.
Jazakallah Shaykh Haytham. We're going to take a short break now, and inshallah return to this point and expound upon it slightly. Please do stay with us on Living in the West.
Love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for those who worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, for those who want to enter the Jannah, the paradise that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created for the believers. And that's why we need to learn and we need to get to know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us, so that we submit ourselves to the orders of Allah. And this is knowledge that we need to learn. Why we're spending more time to look into the verses and to the meanings of the verses in depth, so that we can get to learn from it what we need ourselves to be steadfast, to be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to ponder over the meanings of the miraculous words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Living in the West. Sheikh, just before the break, we spoke about the two groups of people who interpret fiqh and how to go about it. We have a certain number of people who go to scholars in the West. We have a certain number of people who say, look, we've got to only take from scholars in the East. Now then we have those people which, like you said, are the prominent, are the students of knowledge, how they should be interpreted in this, the fiqh. The people, or should we say the scholars from the West, Sheikh, seems to be a bit of a problem here. They're getting attacked on a regular basis because some of their opinions are very, very strange, and like you said just before the break, are very new, something not seen in history, in the Muslim history. Give us some more examples, Sheikh. Why are they coming up with rulings such as this, Sheikh?
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. See, a scholar, he should say what he believes that as the truth. He should not follow the opinions of the people. Okay? And here I would like to mention that it is true that Sufyan al-Thawri, he said, إنما الفقه رخصة okay, من عالم والتشديد يحسنه كل أحد. That the real fiqh is to give what رخصة means permissibility. Okay? From a alim, from a scholar, means a rukhsa. What he meant is a rukhsa or permissibility based on the Quran and Sunnah and the legacy. Not, and he said, fiqh is not to be very strict, because being strict means, say, haram, don't do it, is something that everyone can quote or everyone can do. Now, this statement of Sufyan, many people have interpreted in a way, okay, that I doubt that Sufyan meant it.
Who do you mean? We're talking about Sufyan al-Thawri. Who are we talking about here, Sheikh? Just to give some explanation. Who is this person that they're referring to?
Yeah, okay. Sufyan al-Thawri is one of the Atba' al-Tabi'in. He is one of the great scholars, okay? He died in the beginning of the 2nd century of Hijrah. And he is the Sheikh of Imam al-Bukhari, he is a Sheikh of Imam Ahmad, he is
a foundation for...
Yes, okay. So, now, from this statement, many people said, well, we can go for the easy opinions. We can compromise, okay, our fiqh, because Sufyan al-Thawri said this, and many other scholars said this. And they also quote the hadith of Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, that when the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is giving two choices, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would choose the easy one, provided that it is not haram. And they forget to mention or to emphasize that Aisha said what? Provided that it is not haram.
That's right.
فَإِذَا كَانَ حَرَامًا كَانَ أَبْعَدَ النَّاسِ مِنْهُ. If it is haram, then the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would be, okay, distance or the very far, okay, person from this haram. So, from this angle, what we are trying to say is that this stance that many Muslims or some Muslims and some Muslim scholars have been taking, okay, is not really a founded stance. And here we have to be careful. And maybe we elaborate on this point. We have to be careful because now in the West, for example, and in the East, they are talking about modernity. What does modernity mean? Modernity means the legislation changes based on the situation. This is, in a nutshell, what modernity means. The situation, the legislation, okay, it changes based on the changes of the situation. Now, from an Islamic point of view, okay, we hold a different stance. We should correct the situation based on what? The rulings that Allah Jalla wa Ala revealed. We should not change the rulings based on the situation. Okay? Otherwise, Islam will end up, okay, in a situation similar to where Christianity ended up with. Now, Christianity, the contemporary Christianity, is totally different from what? The previous Christianity. Even from ideological, theological point of view, Christianity now is totally different. And that's why even the Bible is revolving and changing every now and then. Do we want this to happen to Islam? That's why you have to be careful. There are certain rules that cannot be changed in Islam, al-thabit, from an Islamic perspective. And there are certain rules that have certain limit of, or certain boundaries of flexibility.
They're dynamic slightly.
They are dynamic. So these rules may change, or the fatwa may change according to circumstances, provided that the fixed rules are preserved.
Always there.
And once we have that, we have the we can come up with proper solutions for Muslims living in the West.
Okay, and a topic which is one of the exciting topics in the West now, especially financially, is the topic of mortgages, and Islamic mortgages too, of course. But what's the stance on the scholars now regarding mortgages? Because this is a topic which, especially the scholars from the West, found a lot of solutions for.
Okay, this is a very interesting topic. Maybe later on, inshallah, we'll be speaking about the economical dimension. But for example, this issue of mortgage. Mortgage, in a nutshell, is a riba-based loan. People in the West, what do? They go to the banks, and the banks lend them a lump sum amount of money. And provided that this amount of money is used to buy a certain property, and that property will be under a mortgage agreement, means under a rahan, collateral agreement, means that this property is under the collateral agreement of by the bank, which means that the bank can repossess this property if the client fails to pay the mortgage. Now, this is clearly a riba-based system. Some scholars in the West allow this kind of transaction because of what? Because of necessity. Now, and they also say that Muslims in the West are facing a different situation, a unique situation. And because of this, we should give them some concessions. But here, there is a question. Who said that this is a solution? We should go back to the basic principles. And the scholars stated clearly that Allah Jalla wa Ala never made a solution in something that He has prohibited.
So are you saying that this riba is from the thabit or from the dynamic? Which one is it from?
Okay, this is really a very good question. How do we know what is thabit and what is dynamic? A thabit, in a nutshell, and many scholars, by the way, are discussing this issue. A thabit, is, in a nutshell, is a ruling that has been agreed upon by all scholars.
So there's a consensus, a general consensus.
There is an ijma', a general consensus on this ruling. Okay. This is one thing. Of course, once we talk about consensus, this consensus is based on a proof, a direct or an indirect textual proof from the Quran and Sunnah.
Yes.
The second thing is that this ruling is not based on a custom or something that is dynamic. So, the illah or the legal reason behind this ruling is not something that is changing based on time and place. If these conditions are met, then this is a fixed ruling. Now, even these fixed rulings, sometimes because of an extreme necessity, these rulings may change on a temporary basis. And that's why the scholar says, الضرورة تقدر بقدرها. الضرورة should be limited according to the real necessity. Means if this real necessity came to an end, then the concession must come to an end. And that's why the scholars, they said we should differentiate between a fatwa and ahkam in the way we present these fatawa or these rulings. How? We should clearly mention to the people that this is a fatwa because of this situation, because of this necessity. And this is not a general ruling. And we should refer people to fear Allah Jalla wa Ala and to apply, okay, that they should observe this qaida, means they should witness themselves, and whenever the situation or the necessity ends, then they should leave this concession by themselves, and they don't need to ask a scholar whether the concession has to come to an end or not.
So automatically anything that doesn't fall into these two conditions goes into the dynamic, does it?
Generally speaking, it may go to the dynamic part.
So this mortgage, if we can go back to it, it's been taken as dynamic now by some of the scholars,
yes, it has been taken as a dynamic. That's why they say, well, it is allowed to use mortgage in order to acquire your property. apart from that, we have to ask, is this haram thing a solution? Can a haram be a solution?
Very good question, yes.
Okay. And you know the credit crunch and the financial crisis that has happened recently.
Throughout the
What
world,
is throughout the world. What is the main reason for that credit crunch?
It's
The
lending,
riba-based
yes, riba-based
system.
system, yeah.
Okay. So if we are contributing towards the problem by claiming that it is a solution, how non-Muslims are going to look to our Islamic economical system? They are going to take it as a mockery, because they say, well, you claim that Islam provides solutions for humanity, and you are saying that this riba-based system can be used in certain circumstances, and on the other hand, you are saying riba is the source of the problem. How can we understand this kind of dichotomy between what some people are saying and what other people are saying?
Okay, well, Jazakallah Shaykh Haitham, I think you've clarified for us there these two camps and even the students of knowledge. In the next episode of Living in the West, we're going to go a bit more deeper about the permissibility about living in the West. What is it that encompasses the Muslims living in the West, and what rulings are going to be going towards them? I leave you with Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.